dense here, y'all. It is dark. And that's how this realm is set up. Earth is this dichotomy of darkness and light. This is a space unlike any other where you can come in and you could have just lost the love of your life. And the following day, there is a birth of someone precious to you. And you can feel this utter elation and the deepest sorrow simultaneously. That's what the dichotomy of dark and light means. That's why Earth is such an unusual schoolhouse. This realm is set up to provide experiences to learn, grow, and evolve within the dichotomy. But we waste so much time trying to say it to change the circumstances rather than to change ourselves within them. That's the big cosmic aha. That's what people have missed. That's probably one of the biggest lessons that I took back from having been dead. So you arrive into this space and all of a sudden, all of that knowledge is coming back at you tenfold. Like you can't even, it's like you're just becoming super smart. The next thing that happened is my environment changes around me. And so picture yourself standing in an IMAX theater. And this is the next spot where everything I thought I knew to be true got turned on its ear. I am watching my life unfold, and this is that proverbial life review that we hear people speak of. But what's so interesting is you're suddenly going, oh my God, this isn't happening in linear time. I'm 11 years old getting my first English bulldog called Otto von Bismarck, and I'm beside myself with joy because I've been waiting for this dog forever. I'm 17 years old over here, and I'm drinking too much at a college party. I am 12 years old here dressed as P.T. Barnum, and I am winning Living History Day in my middle school. These are all experiences. And when you sit in a space and realize, oh my God, nothing and no one can harm who I really am, then no one of those experiences gets more of your attention than another. So not only am I standing here and my complete and utter definition of what time and space and reality are literally imploding in front of my very eyes, I am standing in awe going, I am all of these things and none of these things all at the same time. I was in utter disbelief. I was in awe. I'm 54 years old now. I have been telling this story for, 21 when this happened. So over 30 something years, I'm telling this story. And I can tell you right now, the little hairs are standing up on my arms on my own story. And the enthusiasm and the excitement that I tell you, these aren't feigned. These aren't, this is not put on. I am so excited to sit here and tell you for the 10,000th time, people, that you've got absolutely nothing to be afraid of. And as I'm in this space and I'm watching my life unfold, and now I've made it 21 years as Mary Helen Hensley. The good, the bad, the ugly, and there was a lot of it. I had this amazing childhood. I grew up in this kind of awkward teenage years. I went off. I was a party girl in college, had a really great time, ran off to Charleston, South Carolina with my sweetheart. This is when I realized it's not about the quantity of time. It's about the quality of life. The ultimate goal for your soul is to come in here and have this immersive, in-depth, rich experience. And so one of the amazing things is right before I came back into the body, and I just had this incredible experience of watching time melt in front of my face and realizing that that's not even real. It's a man-made construct to give us some kind of template through which to work through life. What I also realized is that the guides that were there with me, the whole time that we're in communication, nobody's mouth is moving. This is something where we are just knowing each other. We're sitting in the space and there is, if you want to call it telepathic, whatever, but there was just a knowing, this communication between us where no words had to be spoken. I often find in dream time and in out-of-body experiences, this is the same way that communications will take place quite often as well. And what's been interesting is that has carried forward into my life because people always want to know, how'd you get back in? Well, there was this moment, and I still remember it distinctly, when I realized that I wasn't done. I'm not finished. Oh, and I'm the one who created this. But I'm looking around, and I've just gone through this review of my own life, and I was like, wait a second. I was told in the Southern Baptist Church that there was going to be a judgment. And guess what, guys? Nobody was judging me but me. I was critiquing my performance. I didn't realize this tiny little thing that I had done had made such a huge impact over here, where I was thinking I was so awesome because I had done this, and it really had very little impact on something. I was watching and critiquing my own performance, but with such love, as if you're watching someone who's not you, because it's actually only a piece of you. And so as these beings and I are kind of communicating with one another, they communicate to me, you do realize you can go back. And I was like, peace out, y'all. I'm out because I'm not finished here. And I realized it wasn't because I had to come in and save the world, or it was, my whole mission is to share the story. I'm still learning. I needed to get back in here because with every person that I communicate with every healing session that I do, with every word that I write, I'm healing my understanding. Now, one of the beautiful side effects of that is that I get to tell this story over and over and help people through their own fears. And that's a wonderful way to live life. But when I was coming back, they said to me that they were going to have to set the bar a little higher. I was going to come back as if I wasn't weird enough with some new gifts. Oh, my Lord. And so I crashed back into my body at lightning speed, back into a body that was completely broken. And when I finally awakened in the ER, in the hospital, and I didn't even realize my neck was broken, and this man walks into the room, and he was wearing a uniform, and he had a little notebook. And the very first thing that he said to me was, "You're one lucky little lady." And then all of a sudden I realized, hey, I know you. And he kind of tilted his head and he was like, no. I said, I do. You were at the accident. And he's like, how could you know that? You were the one who reached in and you turned the engine off. Now he's freaking. And I was like, did you check with my roommate? She was a couple of cars behind me. And like, he's like kind of inching back away from me, right? Like, what is actually happening right now? I said, there was this strange lady that came up and put her name and phone number on the passenger side of the car. She reached in through and left it on the seat. Did you get that? Did you get in contact with her? Now he's closing the little notebook and he's looking at me and he's just like, his eyes are full of tears. And he is like, there is no way you could know this. And it was that moment where you could hear a pin drop because he was realizing something and I was realizing something at the same time. I just sat there with my mouth hanging open. I had no other words. And he's like backing out of the room going, what is actually happening right now? Because he was the one who saw the dead body. He was the one who called the ambulance. I have now awakened and told him everything from a bird's eye view that there's no way I could have seen. So you find yourself having to completely reinvent your version of reality. Everything that you thought to be true isn't. It's actually so much better because, now I'm like, okay, time does not exist the way that we think that it does. People have multiple timeline experiences happening simultaneously. Oh my gosh. So I'm starting to reinvent and take in all this new information and had to come back into a 3D physical form and live it. Talk about a challenge because you're so in awe and you're so excited. Do you realize what we've got here? And you're walking around and you see these people and they're so sad and they're so miserable and they're so heartbroken and they're grief stricken and they're worried about the electricity bill and they don't know how to feed the child. And it's like, there's so much pain and angst around. And I'm like, no, you don't understand. That's not your soul. Your soul, who you actually are, put you in and custom ordered that experience, that pain, that heartbreak, that disease, that whatever it is, so that you could gather some little piece of information that you needed. Because this is only one of multiple experiences of you. And this is why when we're mean to each other, those 8 billion other versions of you that are walking around on this planet, you're just dissing yourself. If you let yourself down by being cruel or harsh or awful to somebody else, you're just projecting that onto some other version of you. And this answers that question of how is God in all places at once? Because we're fractals of the same whole. We meet every night, always have, every single day. And when my grandfather appeared to me, this apparition appears in front of me and is giving me information about something that's going to happen in my perceived future. So now imagine now you're 22 years old, you've been dead, you come back and you've got to go integrate into the world again. My dead grandfather pops up and he says to me, hey, we're sending you to chiropractic school. And I was like, I had just graduated from college. I was not going back to school. But he said, we're sending you back to school because you need to understand life from a vitalistic philosophy. And I'm like, I don't even know what that means. You have just experienced the interaction of the mind, the body, and the spirit, and you have just learned firsthand that one does not exist without the other. Okay? Well, you're going to be teaching people and working with people as they start to unravel and learn this as well. So you're going to go and you're going to get an education about how the mind and the body and the spirit cannot be separated in order to have a complete human experience. This body is here to serve you. And when you don't fear death, you don't forget that your body is perfectly capable of serving your soul's purpose. So I'm going through and I'm now interacting with people differently. And suddenly I realized that this extra little gift that they were talking about was I now had the capacity to touch someone initially. Now I don't have to do it. It's an energy exchange and download their hard drive. And so someone can be suffering with something, whether it's physical or emotional, in this timeline, which has actually taken place in some other version of themselves, be it a past projection, a future projection, but something that has taken them out of present time. And the most important thing to remember is that's just a chemical reaction. Right now, right here, me sitting here talking to you is my present time. And so the only way I can conjure trauma or fear about something that has already taken place is through a chemical reaction in my brain. The same goes for fear and projection into the future. Oh my God, what if this doesn't happen? What if I don't get this? What if this happens? It's a chemical reaction. The only thing that is real in your creation is right now. And you, the creator, are constantly creating. You're taking in the stimulus that's all around you and conjuring these outcomes, these experiences in order to further your own growth. And it's been mind-blowing and it's been amazing and it's been, oh my gosh, exhausting sometimes when you're the only cat in the room who knows and you're trying to explain something that someone has never felt or seen or heard before. But I can tell you what, I'm going to go to my grave trying, shouting from the rooftops to tell people, you already are that which you seek, and you absolutely can't mess up here. You cannot mess this thing up. I spoke in the beginning about how my father was a big burly American football player and he was a minister, and he spent his entire career explaining to people about the wonders of heaven and God, and he never talked about the fire and brimstone. He wasn't that kind of preacher. He never preached hell. He always chose to focus on your potential and what he expected you to move towards as opposed to what was going to happen if you screwed up. And so people really always enjoyed listening to him. But as my father went from dementia and transitioned into Alzheimer's, the biggest thing he was challenged with was this horrid fear of death. And I thought, how curious. This guy spent his entire life standing in pulpits, working on the football pitch, working with people to try and alleviate their fear of death by preaching what he felt was the one-way ticket to salvation, which, by the way, guys, there's no such thing as one way, because I'm going to get so many people will go, she never said anything about Jesus. Well, you know what? I was raised with Jesus, but Jesus, like everything else, is a consciousness. It's a state of being. It's an evolution. So is the Buddha energy. So is there all sorts of, in the history of this realm, there have been many Messiah figures who have come through here to bring people into a state of evolution and consciousness. And I believe it resides within all of us. And so here's why this story is important. My father, the Christian minister, who has believed in this concept of heaven and hell and taught based on the spiritual, the scriptures that support this. He's in his room at the nursing home, and he'd had a particularly tough day. And he was shuffling around, and he had sundowner syndrome, which means this very gentle, giant, and peace-loving man would get violent. And he would have these waves of horrible emotion he couldn't express. He was a beautiful orator. He was such a fabulous public speaker. And he'd lost his ability to speak. So all he could do was babble. And so there was this one day that he'd had a really, really tough time. And my mother and I were in the nursing home. We were watching him, and he was shuffling back and forth. It had been months since he had said a coherent word. And he lays down in the bed. He starts reaching up. He's reaching for the ceiling, and she's looking at me like, is he getting ready to die? What's going on? One of the interesting things that I can see is what the energy field around an individual looks like. It's just an ability that I've had always. I can see the energetic field around other human beings. Everything has a field. And when someone is getting ready to pass out of the physical form, it looks like fireworks. It's not like you'd think like a dimmer switch and the lights are going down. It's quite the opposite. Everything's like exploding around them as the energy is gearing up to exit the body. It's gorgeous to look at. And I'm looking at my dad and I'm like, no, Mom, there's no fireworks. Nothing's happening around him. So he's in the bed and he's smiling, he's beaming, and he's reaching up. And he says, as clear as I'm talking to you right now, I can see it. I can see it. And my mom's looking at me, her eyes are like saucers. And I'm like, hey, Dad, because we haven't had a coherent word out of him in months. And he said, hey, sugar. And I said, what's going on? And he said, I can see it. The land beyond the river. I ended up naming a book that because I just thought that was just so phenomenal. He was like, it's so beautiful here. And then he goes, Mama, I can see Mama. She looks so young. And so he's relaying this experience of seeing his own mother. And he is just marveling in her beauty and her youthfulness. And then he stops and the man looks like a deer in headlights. And he goes, oh my gosh, Daddy's here. My father's greatest fear was that his father, who by my dad's very strict Christian standards did not cut the mustard, my father had worried his entire life about the soul of his own father. He thought he took the downward escalator rather than the up. So the experiences that he had had in his life that my father did not deem honorable or being a good father or being a good person even, my father had convinced himself that his dad didn't make it. So now all of a sudden in this beautiful space, he's looking at not only his mother, but at his father. And he's laughing and tears are just pouring down his face. He looks over at my mom and he's reaching out to her and he goes, Helen, I've had it wrong all along. Everybody's welcome here. You can't mess this thing up. And you want to talk about a mic drop moment in my life? She who's been dead and come back, it was right there, witnessing this man who thought and fell for and lived through the illusion of the separation created by a heaven and a hell that the good people get to go and the bad people don't, and like who gets to determine where that cutoff line is. It all just fell away. And in that moment, my father was free. And he got to see that everything that he had known and everything that he had loved and everything that he had hoped for, it was there in the land beyond the river. And it was available to each and every one of us. You are here to provide and be provided for experientially. You can't mess this thing up. When I'm working with people in healing sessions, and when I say to you that I can download someone's hard drive and I can figure out why they've got this particular disease or why their depression is setting in, and when I'm pinpointing a time and a place, it plays like a movie in my head. It again looks like a cinema screen. And so as I'm in and I'm watching and I'm feeling and I'm downloading and understanding, it's something that I'm watching that is a real experience. That's the same way that it works with, when you're seeing an apparition. So someone could be laying on my healing table and we're in communication with their dead mother. And the dead mother isn't physically in the room, but the impression or the footprint and the information is in the room, and I'm able to read that. And so they will appear if they have something valuable to contribute to that person's life, something that might help get them out of a space where they're stuck in a cycle of grief, or a piece of information that's going to help them move forward with their lives. It's never to come back and go, oh, I miss you terribly, honey, I can't wait. That's not how it works, and that's not real. When people say that, that's just not what happens, because when you're out of the body, you're completely aware of how all of this works. They're completely aware that they were a character in your story. And the only way that you could have the experience that you had, whether it be good, bad, or indifferent, was if they played that role for you. So they're hardly going to sit in some other realm and apologize for showing up for something that you asked for or that you needed in order to complete your experience here. And sometimes that's the message. I laugh because a lot of people will walk out of my room, their head shaking, going, well, that was not what I expected. But one thing about me is that I am not going to sit and tell somebody something that they want to hear just to appease them or to whatever. I want them to understand and to think and to grow and to be enriched by that interaction. I'm not there, it's not like I'm doing some kind of magic trick trying to wow them. What I'm trying to do is give them a deeper connection to their understanding of why they are here and why some of the uncomfortable things or the grief or the pain that they're going through, why that's actually happening. That's when you're helping someone to heal. It's whatever the individual needs in order to move forward in their own story. And most people do have mystical experiences, and it happens to a lot of people at night because it's the only time that they could actually digest, but they just don't realize it's happening. They're thinking, oh, dreams are nothing. Dreams are just the brain, just blowing off information, whatever. And they don't understand that they're actually going to bed and having their mystical experiences. They might not live in a world that allows them to digest the metaphysical, the paranormal, or, they might be in an environment where that's not really cool. So these things happen to them at night, and they come in the form of those dreams or those out-of-body experiences there. So we have to start rethinking what we think we know, because a lot of the information that we've been told about how the world works is completely and utterly different than what's actually true. We don't realize that we're running these concurrent timelines and different experiences and different versions of you. And, it's really exciting to me right now as this kind of knowledge begins to unfold and people start to wake up and realize that we're so much more than the old meat suit. You're never alone, ever. You might think you are, and your experience might take you into the bottom of the barrel. And you might feel like that donkey who's trying to climb up the wall and can't get out of the well. And what you've got to realize is that's of your own doing. And that nudge that you get, that feeling that pulls you out of a state of hopelessness, that little, come on, you can do it. When you don't feel like getting up and putting one foot in front of the other, that's the help you're getting from outside. And that can come in the form of somebody who's gone on before you. That can come in the form of a guide. There are so many different ways that you can be influenced. It's just about practicing and listening. It's available to each and every one of us. It's about keeping that channel open and allowing yourself to hear. And this is why clearing interference every single day is essential. It's like the radio station could be playing that song and it's traveling across the waves, no problem. But you could be driving down a backcountry road with poor reception. That doesn't mean that the tower's not sending the signal. It means that your capacity to receive the signal is altered because of your location. Well, your physical, emotional state of being can be altered as well, meaning that you are not receiving the signals. And so it's essential that people clean and clear. This is where frequency can come in. So, like 852 hertz, it's like an internal GPS. 852 allows you to connect to your higher self. And guess who's hanging out with your higher self? Any other higher selves that are there to help assist you. You can sit in a space and go, hey, I need to really get myself back on track here, and I need to be able to hear this guidance. 528 hertz resonates with human DNA. You're dealing with an illness, you can sit in that frequency and alter the state of your actual physical DNA. And so when someone starts practicing with frequency, it is working with this technology where you are taking someone and altering the state of the brainwave, altering the state of the frequencies that are going into the body. You're using it to clear, to wring out that full sponge so that you're starting the day with a clean slate as opposed to carrying everything from yesterday in, because the more stuff you're carrying from yesterday, the harder it is to hear the signal. So you have the same capacity to heal and to connect with that loving guidance as anybody else. People have to have their own experiences, and they're unfolding in their own version and understanding, and they're growing at their own speed. I get that. But part of sharing information with people is giving them a different perspective and giving them another way to be able to interact with the world that might actually be more joyful or might be more productive in their learning. Because while fear can be very useful, the most common thing that happens here is people, they set up camp there. They pitch a tent, start roasting marshmallows, and they live in this fear. So I always say to people, it's important to give fear and anxiety a voice, but never a vote. But a lot of people will stop me at that stage and go, why on earth, if the soul is coming from this space of love and light and perfection and awesomeness, why would you come here for that? I say it's simple. Why would you pull out the Monopoly board when your family or friends come over? And why would you literally sit and pretend to be a silver shoe or a dog and think that you can actually buy a piece of property with a $500 pink bill? Because it's fun. And it's immersive, and it's competitive, and it's something you enjoy doing with the people that you love, and you learn, and you laugh, and you grow, and you get mad, and you're like, why am I mad? Those waterworks aren't even real. He stole my property. He didn't really steal your property. It's giving you the chance to work through and express these emotions that are native to we as human beings. And so ask anyone who's ever put a cord around their ankle and bungee jumped off a bridge, why in the hell would you do that? And they're like, because it's a rush. It's exhilarating. It's amazing. And it's not something that a beautiful, omnipotent, eternal soul that's not encompassing a physical body, that's not something they can do. We crave these experiences. You might not remember this in the physical. You might not remember this with your regular conscious mind. But that eternal, omnipotent soul that you really are, who knows that nothing and no one can harm who you really are, yeah, you were like, bring it on. I need to experience this in order to grow, to move, and to evolve into the being that I want to be. And sometimes experience is uncomfortable. Sometimes the body gets sick. But what people don't realize is these bodies, these programs, these experiences that we have are here showing up for us. So the body is perfectly calculated to let you know when you're screwing up, to let you know when you're off target, to let you know that your goal that you've set for yourself is over here and you have veered off track. You're giving too much of your time and attention away to somebody else or something else or some stress or some worry. You need your undivided attention right now. And if the only way you are going to listen to yourself is for me to smack you and give you a little disease to contend with, to bring all of your time and attention and energy back to yourself, then how valuable is that? But we've made that the enemy. And the reason we make that the enemy or the uncomfortable experiences is because we fear death. And so the whole reason for my being, the whole joy that I have in coming back into this world and spending the last 33 years telling people how amazing it is to die is because I want them to live. And I want them to understand that all this time and all this effort and all this terror and all of this angst that they have about what they fear in the unknown, they already are that which they seek. One of the things I'm asked most often is when people look at the state of the world right now, and they're like, this is the worst time in history. No, it's not. Every point in humanity has had moments like these. And these are essential to the human experience. And I want people to remember that, because when they're fearful of the state, oh my God, but what are my children growing up into? Well, you know what? Imagine my mom, who was born in 1929 and was a teenager moving into World War II. Imagine what she would have thought when she looked at the world. They've just exploded a nuclear bomb. Nobody knows what's happening. Everybody's freaking out. Well, guess what? You go back in history and there isn't going to be a time in history where everything was all rosy here. It's just not the way that this plane is set up. And you need to try and remember that you're here to make the best of the experience that we're having now. You are in a playground, a schoolhouse of immense opportunity to improve and better yourself. And I'll remind you, you know what? You want to keep it real? Call BS on yourself. When you hear yourself saying something, doing something that you know is not in alignment with who you want to become, then call yourself out. Don't wait for somebody else to do it. Change tact and do something different. That's how we regain control when we feel completely helpless, when we feel at a loss, when we feel like the world is crumbling around us. So many people live in that really sick cycle. And so what I encourage you to do is to inject everything, infuse every moment with gratitude. It really does work. I know it sounds trite, and it's like, oh yeah, there's the gratitude again. But when you stay in a place of gratitude, it is so hard for you to get pulled into that negativity, for you to get pulled into that darkness, because we're surrounded by that. But like I said, you're not meant to set up camp there. You're meant to go in, experience it, visit it, and leave it again. But people will hook onto and identify with something that feels low, feels bad, feels horrible, and gives them a reason not to show up. And so I think it's really, really important that you step into each moment with gratitude and that you show up. And it's not for everybody else. I'm not doing this just so everybody else can hear what I have to say. I'm doing this because I need to hear this. I'm telling my own story because I need to hear what I'm saying. I need to be reminded on a daily basis that I got to temporarily die so that I could step out and change it up and come back in here and use everything that is available to me in this experience to its max. That's the story I'm sharing. So just go do it.